9 Eyes Never Shut by Marcus Noyes. Chapter 1. Dirt Again and Again. Dirt. The first thing the lavender tiefling knew in the world once again was the pungent scent of dirt. Something nagging in the back of his mind told him, and he was fairly certain that he was a him, although the edges of that idea were frayed and scuffed as though it wasn't supposed to matter very much. He had done this before. The smell of deep, dark earth and decay was not new. It was familiar, but not like an old comfy cardigan or a mug of cocoa. This familiarity came with a bite. The tiefling did not want it. The same something told him that he should keep his eyes shut, that opening them meant more dirt in his face, in his lungs. Breathing. Oh yes, breathing. He had not thought of that. Had he been doing it all this time? No. A crackling, searing pain shot through his lungs as a great gasp of breath broke through them. The tiefling opened his mouth, further cracking thirst-starved lips in a strangled howl. But no dirt came crumbling down to meet his tongue. The tiefling was surprised. He had been so certain. The certainty had scared him. Not again, he had thought. No, not again. But he had never experienced such a thing before. This was not an again. This was a brand new. A spike of delight rippled. Oh, he had done it. He had succeeded where none before had. He was victorious. He was unstoppable. This would work. The glee swarmed through his chest, though it stopped when it hit the centre. Something was different. And why was he glad? What was he happy for? Who am I? Came the last uncomfortable thought before the tiefling's ears snapped to attention. There were voices above him. Did it work? Is he Nonagon? A ring of truth sparked at that last word. A name. A title, almost. His title. He was Nonagon. He was victorious. He was going to succeed. A gentler feeling tugged from that same somewhere in the back of his mind. No. Nonagon opened his eyes. The light hit him at once, and he immediately closed them again, lifting his hands to shield his face. His arms ached, every muscle screaming for peace. Slowly, he parted long, thin fingers and peered up at the sky. It was cloudy but bright. The entire surrounding landscape was blinding white with snow. There was a storm coming. Through pale cream, the gathering clouds were heavy with rain, biding their time. Perhaps like he had been. Can you sit? Another voice had joined the throng, a female one. The Nonagon slowly lowered his fingers a touch more, taking in the group of people gathered around where he lay. He was not in the ground. Why that surprised him, he did not at the moment understand. He was cold, wet. A shiver crept down his spine and travelled hatefully all the way to the point of his tail, which twitched. It collided with something sturdy, which apparently spurred the female on because suddenly warm, furry hands were clutching at his own, wrenching them away so the two could look at each other. Lucien! Another name. Another name that sent bullets of realization ricocheting around the tiefling's heart. Lucien. I am Lucien. My name is Lucien. I am the Nonagon. I have succeeded. Lucien! The warm hands brushed back long hair from his face. She was tender but feverish with some need. She wanted his confirmation. Who? His throat constricted angrily, berating him for using vocal cords which had all but rusted away like an abandoned instrument. No, Lucien, you know me. Desperation was seeping into her words now, and as Lucien blinked his eyes into a focus, he saw a face that he definitely recognised. Dark fur, pointed ears, a pleading smile at the corners of her mouth. Cree? The jubilation was tenfold as the pair embraced. Cree. I know her. I remember her. I don't. I do. I lied to her. I led her. I led them all. I would rather forget. Careful now, can you? Yes, good. Sit up with me. Here. Yes, good. Lucien was vaguely aware of the bodies gathering around, all sitting down, taking places in the snow, watching him as Cree pawed at his clothing, pulling him up to sit properly. A thick cloak was flung around his shoulders, and he sighed gratefully into the newly found warmth. Even tieflings had their limits, it seemed. Or perhaps being newly undead meant that he was more susceptible to the chill. Her hands were soft. Heat radiated from her as she patted him down, checking for injury. She stopped when she reached his chest. Lucien tracked down, following her gaze, and his own fell onto a terrible sight. By the... But he could still barely speak. He tore at the folds of dirt-stained, smeared shirt that had once perhaps been white. It was tattered, sliced, broken apart, and covered in dried blood. Lucien was awash with it. Every item he wore was tainted with it. Diamond-striped pants he would have sworn he did not own were splattered. Everything was bloodied and ruined. All had been spilled from this very spot, this horror. In almost the dead centre of his chest lay a ghastly, plunging hole. It was too big to be the work of a normal blade. Newly repaired ribs cried out just beneath the cavern by his heart. How? A pulse of heat brushed his skin. Kree's hand had darted towards his shirt. What happened? He wanted a hot bath. But Kree was not paying attention. She was tucking something away into the folds of her own cloak. What? Let's get you warm, shall we? She was rubbing his arms, heat slowly flooding back into his limbs. He looked decidedly away from his own chest. He felt sick. A face swam murkily through the tiefling's mind's eye. Cracked golden teeth, a smile that brought no comfort with it. Lucien spat a mouthful of blood onto the snow. Respect. Lucien began to shake. Well, fuck you too. That was not how he had died. He had died in that clearing, waiting for the ritual to work. It had worked. He was here now. But still, something was wrong. Kree, we found... Another voice came from behind Lucien. He looked around. He was sitting beside a mound of earth in a shallow hole. I was down there. He knew it. Lucien gulped. The man speaking was calling from the far side. He stood next to a long stick which was jutting out of the ground like a needle marking this place's location. Let me see! Kree was holding out a hand, reaching past Lucien towards the man. As Lucien watched, trying to place the other face, the man held up something crimson. No, red. No, maroon. It was difficult to tell with newly adjusting eyes. The thing was long. Brushing the snow as hands holding it at eye level waved the thing towards Kree. There was a snarl. Kree had risen to her feet and was snapping clawed fingers as she walked towards the man. Give it to me. Lucien did not know what was bringing the sudden tension to their little group, but he was too exhausted to think on it much. They left it for me. As soon as the thought entered his head, Lucien dismissed it. They are here with me. Kree stood with her back to him, taking the thing from the other man with a growl as she began to paw at it, examining every inch. Was she searching for something? Lucien could at last see that it was a robe. Long, billowing, bedecked in more details than he could make out. Stars, moons, suns, arrows, and swirls in every which direction. Mine. Kree snarled again. Leave it. With one swift motion, the garment was tossed into the wind, which carried it for several feet before it vanished into a snowdrift. No. Something in that somewhere part of the tiefling's heart burned. A wild longing set into him, driving him to go and retrieve the coat. But he was cold, and he was tired, and he was finally home. Kree was back at his side, gripping his hands once more and looking at him with deep determination. What? He had begun to ask what happened to him, but the question died in his throat. It hurt to speak, for one thing, and for another he had just spotted something. On Earth? Lucien took his hands back from Kree, examining them with horrified eyes. This was not how he had left his skin. An inked serpent wound its way across his hand, up his wrist, and as Lucien shoved up the sleeve of an over-bold, multicoloured jacket, he saw that the snake showed no sign of stopping. Ah, yes. Kree had a touch of disgust in her voice now, as she sent hushed instructions to the half-dozen or so other cloaked figures to make ready to depart and fetch Lucien something to drink. What? Did you do this? The tabaxi looked as though she were about to cuff Lucien around the side of the head, but thought better of it. Of course not, she hissed, tugging his sleeve back down again and wrapping the cloak more tightly around him. But I know who did. And, well, you are not going to like it.